don't get stuck in a fixed mindset. This is one thing that I'll tell all of you. Don't get stuck in a fixed mindset of only living in one location all of your life. And I think that is a fantastic piece of advice. I can't understand, or it just doesn't make sense to me, these people. Some people have never even left their like little village or town that they grew up in. I mean, I was quite lucky in that aspect that like my parents did travel, and so they it was kind of like normal to us, which definitely does come down to like a privileged background. Like I had a very normal upbringing, but we definitely went on probably like one holiday, one family holiday a year, whatever, to Egypt or like to Spain or whatever. So I did grow up going and experiencing different countries. But don't be one of these people who like, or like for example in the US, it's something crazy like 50 or 60% of people haven't even got a passport. And like the US is great and it's very varied because of all the different states. I completely get that, but there's a whole world out there, and depending on what your goals are, there's much better places than being in the US, particularly from like a tax point of view. And that's the other thing to mention. A lot of people will think about, oh, from a tax point of view, I should open in this country because I get these benefits and it has these negatives. I get these tax benefits, it's got this bank, it's got these payment processes, whatever. But people don't think about that from their personal life, which does seem quite funny to me. People will go through a whole amount of effort to optimize where their business is located without ever thinking about optimizing where they're located. So yeah, anyway. Just don't get stuck on a fixed mindset of being in one location. Just go and travel. Like the other thing about travel is the worst case scenario, you don't like it and you buy yourself a $500 plane ticket back home, and you're literally back where you started. So there's not. It's often how I try to think about my decisions is what is the worst outcome and how easy is it for me to reverse from this decision. If I find out this isn't just to travel, this applies to every area of my life. If I make this decision, how easy is it for me to change my mind? What would I lose, and what position would I be back in? Like with travel, there's really quite limited downside. Like unless you're picking extremely dangerous countries, where of course there's possibility of kidnap if you're going out to these very dangerous places. So of course be sensible, but in 99% of cases, the downside is you got a flight over there, you realize you didn't like it, and you get a $500 flight back home, and you wasted like a couple of days, but at least you had the experience. So yeah, there's kind of limited downside to what can really go wrong if you go to a country and you don't like it. Move locations based on your current goals. For example, if your goal is to become, this is a silly example, but if your goal is to become a mountain climber, it makes sense to be in a location where there's a lot of mountains, where there's the ability for you to rent equipment to be a mountain climber, where there's other people who are mountain climbers that you can learn from and so on. So that's a very, very basic example, but it literally applies to anything else. Like if you're trying to build a particular business, it makes sense to go to a certain place to be around to have access to the right type of equipment and so on. Like even now when I'm doing like the OnlyFans business, there are requirements that I have before going to a particular country, such as we need very good and very stable Wi-Fi. We need access to good infrastructure in terms of shopping, if we need to buy a new phone, if we need a new cable for something, if we need like 4G routers or whatever it is. Like we want a good access to shops or postal delivery systems so we can order from Amazon and it arrives very quickly. So they're kind of like the things to consider. But like you can add a huge amount of friction between you and your goals by being in a location that doesn't complement what your goals are. Like this applies to women. Colombia is like a perfect example of that. Taxes, business, happiness, spirituality, and literally everything else. Like for example, spirituality, I would look at if I felt I really needed to relax and de-stress, I would be looking at somewhere like Bali. In terms of happiness, you can look up like what is the happiest country in the world. I believe it's Denmark, and so you could just choose that if you want to be more happy, go and spend some time around some happy people. And then the other key benefit of changing locations, which I think most people really, really overlook, is it's a chance to reset your habits. Most of your habits, like you'll notice, since I've now been out in Ibiza, I've been publishing content very, very frequently. And that's simply because I now have the habit, because I've reset myself, whereas in Colombia I didn't really have the habit. I've now reset myself and I told myself I need to record more content now that I'm out here. And so now I have the habit of to come out here, sit down the end of the garden, and talk to you guys. And I know how much you will appreciate that. But in all seriousness, by moving locations, it's really a chance to reset your habits. Most of your habits are based off of cues, and cues are generally tied into your environment. So it can be cues in your apartment that trigger you to perform a certain habit. It can be the location that you're in when you walk past a particular coffee shop, you have a habit to go in there. Whatever it is, most habits are based off of your location. So by moving locations frequently, it gives you a chance to completely reset all of the habits that you have tied to that particular location. So be aware of any positive habits that you want to make sure that you continue to bring through with you. Though another perfect example is in Colombia. I was staying in a place that had like a fantastic gym. Like I put a few videos on my story, and so I use the gym not quite every day, but quite frequently. And one issue of being out here is we've got a little gym over there, but it's nothing to write home about. And so I found that I've been working out much less. So again, I'm not saying that I've got this whole thing perfected, but I'm just very, very much aware of it, and I suggest you to be too. So yeah, it's just by changing location, it gives you a fantastic opportunity to kill any bad habits and routines you've got yourself into.